Hi there. I'm off this week. Apparently, we're more productive at work after a good holiday. So, I'm counting this Caribbean rum distillery tour as professional development. Yours, Colin.
Take your holiday as seriously as British Airways Holidays take your holiday. Atoll protected.
I'm Andrea, founder of a boutique handbag brand, Andy, and this is why I switched to Shopify. I tried 3 other platforms prior to Shopify, and I remember my breaking point was when I would try to make one little change and my entire site would go down. Shopify made it really easy for me to shift everything over and hit the ground running. I was able to migrate my products and all of my customer information over.
Get a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/listen. Go to shopify.com/listen to take your business to the next level today.
Are you a lifelong fan of General Hospital?
Are you a new fan who wants to know more about the history of the show?
Do you enjoy talking about the show with others?
Do you find yourself yelling at the TV?
Is your self-care an hour a day in Port Charles?
If so, we invite you to join hosts
Amanda Kimmel
and Shannon Coach at the place where all the hidden conversations take place and secrets are revealed.
Meet us at Pier 54,
a General Hospital fan podcast.
Hello. Hi.
Welcome to the Port Charles 411. Today is Lucky and Liz part 35, Lucky part 43. Today we'll cover April 23rd through July 19th. We've gotten one more month, I think, an extra month or two in there, 2010.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming to the end. No, not really even the end. So over the past few episodes, Liz is pregnant, wasn't sure who the dad was. Helena tampered with the results, and the results say that the baby is Nikolas's. And so she and Lucky she's really struggling. She had like a complete mental breakdown, and she's just trying to really heal from how badly she messed up.
Yep.
I think that's a really good way to just quickly summarize it. And while she was at the sanatorium, or she was at Ferncliff, Shady Brook, one of the two, I forget. I'm sure that today's story will tell us. Lucky was doing a lot of police work, so there is going to be a lot of that stuff because we're also in the middle of Michael killing Claudia.
Mm-hmm.
So that impacts his family. So there's a little bit more, I would say, than we've seen with other past cases where it's just been kind of like a one-off. So
right.
I feel like his police work was definitely much more of storylines that actually impacted him than, how we see Dante. Like Dante does these things in Chase too, but the storylines don't really ever seem to have direct impact on them or necessarily, I guess with Dante a little bit more because of Sonny, but I feel like a lot of Lucky's, because he had to deal with stuff with Luke, he had to deal with stuff with Ethan, now we're with Michael,
right?
Things like that. So yeah, but we pick up with Luke joking with Tracy about Helena's antics. Oh, that was the other thing. So yes, Helena was tampering with the evidence, but also she was kind of torturing Liz.
Mm-hmm.
Not kind of. She was.
Definitely.
And she was going to see her in the hospital and really just messing with her.
Right.
And Luke was not completely dismissive of her presence. Behind the sarcasm was a quiet concern, especially about Helena's fixation on Liz and her unborn child. Because remember, the reason she did it is because she wants a Cassadine heir.
Mm-hmm.
After Tracy left, Luke called the sanitarium to check to see how often Helena had been visiting Liz, suspecting that whatever scheme Helena was hatching, it wasn't about seducing him. It was about controlling the next generation. And Liz, once again, was caught in the crossfire. Meanwhile, Lucky found himself at the center of a deeply personal and professional dilemma when Dante informed him that Michael, not Sonny, had killed Claudia. It wasn't just another case. This was about family. I didn't need to give this intro. Sonny had begged Dante to protect his son, and now Lucky had to figure out what to do with the truth. When he tracked Michael down at the boathouse, he didn't arrest him on sight. Instead, Lucky sat with him and asked for the full story. Michael explained everything, how he feared for Carly during a high-risk pregnancy, how he acted out of instinct to protect her and the baby, not intending to kill Claudia. Lucky listened closely, not just as a detective, but as someone who understood what it meant to grow up too fast and to carry the weight of other people's mistakes and to want to protect the people you love, even when it costs you. At the police station, Cam called him about a father-son picnic, and Lucky didn't hesitate to say yes. Even while juggling a moral crisis involving his cousin, Lucky made time for Cam, showing that no matter what happened between him and Liz, he hadn't walked away from her boys. I'm going to change that to the boys because those are
Right.
his boys too. Liz felt that too. Later, when talking with Shirley, an older patient at the hospital who had grown close to Liz and the kids, Liz smiled as she described Cam's bond with Lucky. She admitted that while Lucky wasn't Cam's biological father, he had raised him since he was a baby, and they were more alike than most people realized. Then came the quieter, more emotional truth. Liz wished the new baby could have Lucky as a father too. That moment, as simple and honest, showed how much she still saw in Lucky, the stability, the gentleness, the deep love he had for her and her children. Even after everything, he was still the man she hoped she could shape her child's life. At the same time, Nikolas was trying to step up in his own way. Oh, and Liz has also been very clear with Nikolas that she does not want the Cassadines involved at all. Basically, really
Mhm.
doesn't want Nikolas involved very much either, beyond, yes, this is your child. And he was determined to be present for the baby he believed was his. That's the worst part, too, though, is that Nikolas did believe that the baby was his.
Right.
He was not in on this. That was completely Helena.
Mm-hmm.
He confided in Patrick about his regrets as a father to Spencer and admitted that even though Liz didn't want to raise the child with him, he was committed to doing better. But Nikolas knew that he represented a painful chapter in Liz's life. His affair with her had helped break her and Lucky apart, and no matter how noble his intentions were now, Liz wasn't ready to let him go. Patrick questioned whether Nikolas's motives were rooted in fatherhood or a lingering desire for Liz, but Nikolas insisted it was about his kids. Still, Helena's presence loomed large. She continued spinning her own web, going as far to eliminate the lab technician who altered the baby's paternity results, ensuring her version of the truth would stand. Girl, there is still DNA.
Yep.
It was a dark move, and this is 2010. It was 2000. Oh, it was a dark move and one that added weight to an already fragile situation. Through all of this, Lucky remained steady while Nikolas pushed for involvement. Lucky didn't make any grand declarations. He just kept showing up at the police station for Michael, at the park for Cam, and in Liz's thoughts when she imagined the kind of future she wanted for her baby. Liz may not have said the words out loud to Lucky, but her conversation with Shirley made it clear. She saw Lucky as the person she could rely on, even if things between them weren't easy. In many ways, Lucky was doing what he had always done, balancing responsibility with compassion and holding space for others, even when it was hurting himself. He never forced himself into Liz's life, but he never left it either. And in a time when so much felt uncertain, Lucky remained a quiet constant, a father figure, a protector, and maybe still, in Liz's heart, the person she once believed she'd spend forever with. Michael's confession to Claudia's murder put Lucky in one of the most complicated positions of his career and his life. Michael explained that he'd only followed Jason's instructions to cover it up. Yikes. And while he knew his family had meant to protect him, he was ready to take responsibility. Lucky could see the conflict in him and recognize the damage already done. He empathized with Michael, acknowledging that the young man had been through far more than anyone his age should. Still, Lucky knew he had an obligation. He gently gave Michael the choice, come clean or keep running. Michael chose the truth. When Jason showed up at the boathouse to take Michael away, Lucky stood his ground, even drawing his weapon to stop him. Jason pleaded with Lucky to let him handle it, to help Michael disappear before things got worse. But Lucky wouldn't bend. He wasn't angry or aggressive, just firm. He told Jason that Michael had confessed and that the law could not be ignored. Even when Jason explained that Dante had already revealed the truth to the court, Lucky refused to walk away. He agreed not to repeat Michael's confession, but still took him into custody, carefully navigating both his duty as a cop and his compassion for the boy's family. At the station, things got tense. Mac was furious that Lucky hadn't arrested Michael on the spot and read him his Miranda rights. Diane, already waiting to represent Michael, was blocked from speaking to him until he was officially processed. When questioned by the judge about his handling of the arrest, Lucky was honest. He hadn't known that there was a warrant, and he'd only been asked to find Michael because he knew where to look. The judge pushed further, asking about Lucky's relationship with Michael. And Lucky didn't sugarcoat it. They weren't especially close, but he did love him. And when asked whether Michael was capable of deliberate violence, Lucky said no. He believed that Michael had already suffered more than most people do in a lifetime, and if anyone deserved mercy, it was him.
That integrity carried over into his personal life, particularly when it came to Liz. When he found Helena confronting her at the hospital, trying to manipulate her under the guise of a private conversation, Lucky stepped in immediately. Liz made it clear she wanted nothing to do with Helena, threatening to press charges if she didn't back off. Lucky supported her without hesitation. After Liz walked away, Lucky admitted he'd love nothing more than to arrest Helena for stalking. He didn't share Luke's habit of laughing off her schemes. He took her seriously and would have no problem throwing her in jail. Helena, ever entertained by Spencer's defiance, welcomed the renewed tension. I'm assuming that's supposed to say the Spencer defiance, not just Spencer, because now we're confusing people. Later, Liz shared the story with her friend Shirley, who was back in the hospital and growing weaker from her battle with cancer. Shirley asked about Liz's love life, and Liz confided in her about Helena's ongoing interference and how Lucky had stepped in to protect her. Even after everything, she still admired that his first instinct was to be there for her. That protective streak wasn't performative or calculated, it was just who he was. Liz didn't dwell on it, but the sentiment hung there quietly. She still saw the best of Lucky, even if they weren't together. While Lucky was keeping his distance emotionally, Nikolas was trying to move closer, which has been a theme this whole time, because he keeps saying, I'll leave you alone, and then he doesn't.
Right?
He promised Spencer that there'd be a family, that they would support Liz and raise the baby together. Why is he telling his son that when she so clearly has said that's not what she wants?
I know.
Spencer asked if that meant there'd be a real family, and Nikolas, perhaps trying to reassure himself as much as his son, promised he'd try. But Helena wasn't so sure. She warned Nikolas that Lucky was falling back into his old patterns, playing the protector, positioning himself to reclaim a place in Liz's life. If Nikolas didn't act, she predicted he'd be shut out completely. Not long after, Lucky showed up at Windermere to confront Nikolas directly. He wanted Helena gone and out of Liz's life entirely. Nikolas pushed back, arguing that Lucky no longer had a say in how the Cassidines handled their affairs. I feel like he does whenever it comes to Liz and her boys, because two of those boys are still his.
Right.
He reminded Lucky that it had been his decision to end things, that Lucky had cut ties, not him. Still, Lucky persisted. He said it wasn't about him and Liz being together, it was about keeping her safe. He believed Helena was a threat, and if Nikolas truly cared about Liz, he'd feel the same. The conversation exposed how layered their conflict was. It wasn't just about jealousy or paternity, it was about who truly had Liz's best interest at heart.
Probably the one that's actually listening to her.
Right, exactly. Meanwhile, Helena continued to play her own game. She met with Thor, her ever-loyal manservant, to confirm that the lab technician who'd changed the paternity results had died without raising any suspicion. No one would question it, she said confidently. As far as the world knew, the child Liz was carrying belonged to Nikolas. But Helena knew the truth, and so did Tracy, who happened to overhear Helena mention the Spencer name and immediately grew suspicious. Helena made a cryptic comment about Liz's baby nearly being a peasant, prompting Tracy to question why Helena was so fixated on the child when Nikolas already had a Cassidine heir. Meanwhile, Lucky visited Lulu, but learned from Maxie that Lulu had rushed to support Dante at Michael's sentencing. Maxie ended up reflecting on new love and making a passing comment about Lucky and Liz, which led to Lucky confirming that he and Liz were done for good. He admitted it felt freeing to finally let go of the fantasy of them being together. Maxie, who understood what it was like to have your heart stomped on, told him that both lived to fight another day. At the hospital, Liz confided in Shirley that she was holding on to hope for a future with Lucky. She was encouraged by how he'd stood up to Helena, proof she thought that he still cared. Shirley was cautious, reminding Liz that she had once said things were beyond repair. But Liz felt differently now, especially after that moment of connection over Helena's threats. Shirley wondered where Nikolas fits in, considering he was the baby's father. What Liz didn't know was that Helena was plotting to keep the truth about the baby's paternity buried, insisting to Thor that they couldn't let Tracy find out Lucky might actually be the father. At the station, Lucky was asked to escort Michael to Pentonville after a harsh sentence was handed down. He let Carly visit her son one last time and apologized for not looking the other way when Jason had tried to get Michael out of the country. Carly wished he had, but made it clear that Dante was the one she blamed. Later, as Michael said an emotional goodbye to his family, Lucky seemed deeply unsettled by how everything had played out. He ended up at Jake's, sitting at the bar, visibly burdened by the day's events. Coleman noticed his mood shift when Lucky ordered a scotch. Though he hesitated, Coleman poured it, but Lucky just stared at the glass. Maxie showed up and quickly caught on, gently urging him not to throw away his sobriety. Though he snapped at first, her persistence worked. She reminded him that Michael's situation wasn't his fault and that his drinking wouldn't fix any of it. Lucky admitted he was struggling with the idea that he had become a rigid, self-righteous version of himself, like something his father had warned him against. He appreciated Maxie's honesty and, in the end, didn't drink. Just as they were playing pool, Liz called to invite Lucky to dinner with the boys, but he declined. She heard Maxie in the background and soon showed up at Jake's, assuming the worst. When she saw Lucky with Maxie, she accused them of jeopardizing his sobriety, but Lucky set the record straight. He had been drinking root beer. In fact, Maxie had talked him out of drinking earlier. Their confrontation turned heated when Liz took a shot at Maxie's past, and Maxie fired back with sharp words about Liz's deception. Yeah, Liz should really know not to start throwing stones at Maxie at this point when you weren't sure who your baby daddy was. Okay.
No.
Lucky stepped in and said they needed to stop monitoring each other's lives. Liz agreed, but warned him not to play hero next time Helena stirred things up. Still, Lucky insisted Helena wasn't harmless and that she shouldn't underestimate the danger.
Back at the hospital, Liz found Helena talking to Shirley and immediately jumped in, protective and furious. Helena claimed innocence and suggested that Liz was mentally unstable and might benefit from sedation at Shady Brook. Steve arrived and gave Helena a choice, leave on her own or with security. Afterward, Nikolas appeared and Steve warned him about Helena's behavior, which led to a tense exchange. Nikolas assumed Steve's attitude stemmed from the disapproval over Liz's pregnancy. I don't think Steve disapproved of the pregnancy. He was mad at Nikolas for this entire situation.
Mm-hmm.
Helena eavesdropped with delay as the tension between Nikolas and the hospital staff deepened. Later, she warned Nikolas that Liz could manipulate the baby away from him, just as she had manipulated him. Shirley, undeterred, told Liz that she had intentionally approached Helena out of curiosity. She downplayed any threat, pointing out that as a terminally ill woman, she didn't have much to lose. Liz was inspired by Shirley's resilience and decided to take another shot at reconnecting with Lucky. But when she told Nikolas about Helena harassing Shirley, he downplayed it, suggesting that Liz might be exaggerating to get Lucky's attention. Liz didn't appreciate this accusation. She told Nikolas that Lucky already knew what was going on and was more concerned about Helena than Nikolas seemed to be. She vowed to raise her child with an understanding of the Cassadine legacy and warned Nikolas not to dismiss the danger. Helena was listening nearby and was clearly satisfied with the chaos she helped stir up. Back at the station, Lucky and Dante reviewed Michael's files, hoping for anything they could use. Their efforts were interrupted by Judge Carroll, who recognized what they were doing. He praised Dante for following the law, but not Lucky, who he felt hadn't lived up to the same standard. And then Liz was just growing increasingly uneasy with Nikolas and Helena's looming presence and began turning to Lucky again, not out of love, but for a sense of security. She showed up at his door, upset that Nikolas suggested she move into Windermere, claiming she didn't want to, but clearly shaken by the pressure. Lucky listened and reassured her that she had the right to make her own decisions. He didn't push, didn't draw back in emotionally, but made it clear that he would always be there for their boys. Even when Liz admitted she feared Helena, Lucky didn't jump in to act as her savior. As for his work, Lucky remained deeply involved in Michael's situation, caught between doing what was right and helping those he cared about. He worked with Dante and Jason, weighing the options that tested his personal ethics. When Dante suggested pushing the limits of the law to get Michael out of prison, Lucky didn't bite. And then he also started spending more time with Maya and Claire, and Maya was Mary May Ward's granddaughter, and Claire was an attorney. His chats with Claire especially were easy and straightforward. No history, no heavy baggage. They kept it light and real, teasing each other and talking about things without pressure. Lucky wasn't looking for anything serious. It was just nice to have a normal connection for a change. And then Liz apologized for snapping, but made it clear that she did not trust Nikolas, which really frustrated Shirley. From Shirley's perspective, if she were in Liz's shoes with a wealthy, charming guy who basically adored her, she'd at least give him a chance. She did give him a chance. She got pregnant. His grandmother is harassing her, and she lost her fiance.
Yep.
Which was not the guy that she was sleeping with. But Liz just wanted her to respect where she was coming from. She explained that things with Nikolas were messy and complicated, and having someone push them together wasn't helping. Liz admitted Nikolas could be incredibly charming, but also domineering and pretty manipulative when he didn't get his way. She even suspected that he knew exactly what he was doing during their affair. Shirley wondered if Liz was trying to rewrite the story because she regretted what happened, but Liz insisted she wasn't in love with Nikolas the way she was with Lucky. Shirley pointed out that Lucky didn't feel the same about Liz anymore either, but Liz was determined to raise her baby on her own and didn't want to move to Windermere just because Lucky didn't return her feelings. Good girl, Liz.
Mm-hmm.
Shirley apologized for pushing too hard, but encouraged Liz to find some way to get along with Nikolas for the baby's sake. Later on, Liz spotted Nikolas waiting for an elevator and called out to him. She apologized for how she had been treating him, admitting she had been unfair and blaming everyone but herself for the affair. Nikolas was taken aback, but appreciated the honesty because she just took off. It's also his fault. She needs to say, but also this is still your fault because it takes two to tango.
Right, quit pressuring me for ridiculous things like moving into Windermere.
Right? Liz said that she was willing to meet him halfway as long as he respected her boundaries. She was clear she wanted to be independent. No moving to Windermere, no taking his money. Nicholas argued that providing for the baby was part of being a good father and promised he wasn't trying to push her around. Seriously, dude? How many times now have you asked her to move into Windermere? Still, he worried that with their very different lifestyles, Cameron and Jake might end up resenting their new sibling for having more advantages. Liz flat out refused to let her kids get caught up in the Spencer-Cassadine feud, saying she wanted to raise her children with enough love to see beyond all the family drama. Nicholas asked her to really think about it before turning down his offer to help. At the hospital, after Cameron's checkup, Liz promised to take the boys to the lake and that weekend since she couldn't afford the day camp that Cameron wanted. She called Audrey to thank her for offering to help, but she insisted she did not want to take money from her grandmother. Audrey suggested that she talk to Nicholas, but Liz was determined to show that she could make it on her own. Meanwhile, in the background, and I have a feeling that this is going to come into play down the line, Spinelli and Carly were plotting to break up Lulu and Dante, and this would have been Brooklyn thing.
Mm-hmm.
Their plan involved planting evidence to frame Dante as a corrupt cop, with Lucky being the one to stumble across it, hoping that it would bring justice for Jason and Michael. Carly boosted Spinelli's confidence by reminding him that his hacking skills could really make a difference.
Lucky and Ethan caught up at the Haunted Star talking about their dad Luke's disappearance and the escalating tension between Sonny and Johnny. Maya showed up with news that Tracy hadn't gone to Fiji like everyone thought, and Lucky immediately suspected Helena was behind both Luke and Tracy vanishing. Ethan and Maya tried to convince Lucky that Helena had no motive, but Lucky wasn't buying it. A text from Luke saying he and Tracy were on vacation reassured Ethan, but Lucky remained skeptical. At the hospital, Liz caught Shirley selling jewelry again and gave her a hard time, but Shirley stood her ground. Nikolas arrived mentioning plans to visit the family's private island in Greece, which shocked Shirley. Liz admitted she was relieved Nikolas was leaving town for a bit because it meant less pressure from him, especially about money. She was determined to become financially independent and was even considering investing in an experimental drug Steve told her about, despite the hefty price tag. On the Cassadine private island, Lucky snuck in disguised as a lost traveler, but was quickly caught. Nikolas showed up and refused to let Lucky search the island for Luke and Tracy by himself. They argued bitterly about trust, past betrayals, and Nikolas's affair with Liz. Lucky told Nikolas that Helena had taken everything from him, and that part of what he'd lost was represented by Liz, who had once been his chance at happiness. Nikolas insisted he wasn't involved in the feud and still cared about Lucky, but Lucky wasn't convinced. He made it clear he couldn't and wouldn't forgive Nikolas and walked away, leaving the tension between them hanging heavy. Lucky locked the cell door with Nikolas inside, telling him he'd leave the keys nearby and that Helena's henchman would probably let him out soon. It was more of a symbolic gesture, a brief experience of what Lucky had endured while held captive by Helena. Later, Helena crossed paths with Nikolas on the street and was shocked to find that he had packed up her belongings and dumped them on the docks. Nikolas didn't buy her surprise, especially after she had kidnapped Luke and Tracy, putting Tracy's life in danger. Helena, unrepentant, insisted that Luke had enjoyed the adventure and told Nikolas to be mad at Lucky instead of her. Meanwhile, Liz caught up with Steve near the bank of elevators. She shared that she had met with her attorney and arranged to access the trust funds Jason had set up for Cameron and Jake. Liz was planning to invest in the experimental drug company Steve had introduced her to. Steve was cautious about risking the boy's future, but admitted that he was also investing and considered it a no-brainer. Liz was confident that she could replace the money she took from the trust and was determined not to depend financially on Nikolas. Later on, Nikolas approached Liz while she was working at a computer and mentioned he had just returned from Greece. Liz cut him off, saying she was already aware of Tracy's hospitalization after the kidnapping. Nikolas assured her that he had evicted Helena from Windermere, but Liz remained firm on her decision, not moving into Windermere with him. Nikolas expressed frustration over Liz continually pushing him away, which Liz argued that Helena's eviction wasn't a guarantee that she wouldn't return. Their conversation grew tense when Nikolas questioned how long it would be before Liz pushed him out of the baby's life. Liz denied any intention of doing that, but accused Nikolas of trying to control the situation and implying she couldn't take care of her children. Nikolas said he just wanted to provide better for them, but Liz doubted that would be the last of it. She revealed plans to secure her financial independence through investments and confirmed she would wait for Lucky no matter how long it took. Nikolas brought up her risky investment decision, but Steve defended Liz's choice, understanding her desire to keep Nikolas from using money as leverage. Nikolas insisted his main goal was to provide for his child. At the police station, Maxie showed up on crutches, explaining she had tripped on a street curb. She was there to see Claire at Jason's request and handed Lucky a photo sent to her by Franco. Lucky was surprised and had no idea why Franco contacted Maxie. Maxie herself didn't know, but wanted Claire to see the picture and then planned to leave. She also vented about her growing strain in the relationship with Spinelli. Lucky encouraged her not to give up on love, seeing the genuine feelings between her struggles. Claire arrived shortly after, explaining she had been pulled away from shopping for Michael's release when Maxie called. The photo caught Claire's interest, and Maxie said it proved Franco was dangerous and needed to be locked up. Claire asked why Maxie had gone to Jason instead of Mac, and Maxie explained that Franco was obsessed with Jason. After thanking Maxie for her help, Claire made a call to discuss Franco, and soon Ronnie appeared at the squad room. Back at Lucky's apartment, Luke was sleeping on the couch, explaining that Tracy had kicked him out over their marriage not being legal. Although he still owned the Haunted Star, he'd need a powerful attorney to sort things out with Tracy. Lucky made breakfast for Luke, who assured him that Tracy would come around. Lucky wasn't so sure, pointing out that Luke was lying to himself. Ethan then showed up looking for Luke. Both brothers agreed Tracy was deeply hurt. Lucky urged Luke to genuinely work on winning her back, not relying on old tricks, and Ethan suggested surprising her with something new. Luke was confident he had a plan, but was warned that Tracy had changed the locks and was serious about keeping him out. Maya arrived looking for Ethan, and Luke hoped she could provide security codes to the mansion so that he could speak with Tracy face to face. Why would she do that?
Right.
Maya was skeptical, noting Luke's years of lies and how he had kept quiet about their sham wedding. Luke insisted that Tracy was the one and downplayed the significance of a legal marriage certificate. Maya observed Tracy seemed happier single, but admitted she probably wasn't ready to forgive Luke yet. Lucky stepped in to plead Luke's case, and Maya eventually agreed to help. Lucky expressed relief, wanting Luke and Tracy to sort things out so Luke wouldn't be a burden. Maya wondered why Luke hadn't moved in with Ethan, but Lucky stayed quiet as Ethan awkwardly explained it would cause too many problems since Ethan lived close to Lulu and Maxie. Maya hoped things would work out, and Ethan offered to buy her a drink, though she wanted to wait and see how her day went. At the hospital, Nikolas brought flowers to Shirley, who appreciated the gesture and praised his persistence despite Liz's coldness. No, Shirley needs to stop. Liz walked in, clearly annoyed, and confronted Nikolas about being there. Nikolas said he was dropping off flowers, but Liz didn't buy it and left. Shirley pointed out that Liz's attitude wasn't helping the situation, and Nikolas admitted he was frustrated since they had been close friends before things got complicated. He wanted to make things right for Liz and the baby. Later, Liz ran into Nikolas again by the elevators, apologized for her earlier outburst, and said she wanted to talk. She mentioned Steve had told her Nikolas knew about her investment plans and asked him to stay out of it since she was doing it herself for the kids. Nikolas reminded her that they had recently declared their love for each other and hoped they could learn to trust one another again before the baby arrived. No, it's not happening.
Ethan admitted that he had lied to Maya about Johnny's penthouse because he noticed how she reacted. Lucky warned him that when Maya found out, she'd be furious. Meanwhile, Tracy insisted that Luke be arrested. Despite Luke's attempts to talk to her, she ignored him as the police took him away. At the station, Lucky came to help his father, who admitted it was time to adjust his plan to win Tracy back. You'd think the woman had you arrested. Lucky warned him that pressing charges made things harder, and Luke admitted that he hadn't expected Tracy to call in the army. He joked that a good rule was never to tell a woman you're married when you're not. Lucky promised to remember. Over Pizzulo's, Lucky stopped to see Sonny, not as a cop, but because he was worried about Michael. Sonny blamed the justice system for Michael's imprisonment, but acknowledged it wasn't perfect. Lucky urged Sonny to give Michael some space to adjust, explaining how growing up in Luke's shadows shaped him, and that Michael's life was impacted by Sonny's choices. He asked Sonny to think about helping Michael find a fresh start. After Lucky left, Sonny called Luke to update him. Luke assured Sonny he hadn't told Lucky about Sonny's plans regarding Johnny, but Sonny warned Luke to keep Ethan away from Johnny on Friday. Then Lucky bumped into Maxie on the piers, who was frustrated because Franco had returned and made her feel unsafe going to everyday places alone. She blamed herself for the mess, admitting she was attracted to the danger that Franco represented. Lucky reassured her that everyone had their struggles and advised her to take a deep breath and relax. Lucky's apartment, Luke told Ethan about a plan to win Tracy back that involved a two-man operation in Monte Carlo, but Ethan declined since he had a good thing going with Johnny. Luke warned that Sonny was pushing back hard against Johnny and that they needed to get Ethan out of the way before Friday. At the hospital, Liz wrapped up her work and picked up a book to inspire Shirley with jewelry-making ideas. But then Steve and Epiphany shared tough news. Shirley's cancer had spread to her brain. Liz was stunned and insisted she needed time to process it. Later, Shirley accepted the diagnosis calmly and mentioned that she'd considered surgery if offered. Liz hoped Patrick could help since he was the best neurosurgeon around. Then back at Lucky's place, Luke was packing to leave town, not because he didn't enjoy Lucky's hospitality, but to give Tracy space and a chance to miss him. Lucky wasn't sold on the idea, thinking that Luke would have much better luck staying close to show how he cared. Luke believed absence made the heart grow fonder and insisted his only goal was to win Tracy back. He reminded Lucky that Tracy had pushed him to improve himself, and Lucky admitted he wasn't sure how he would have handled things with Liz without Luke's support. Luke encouraged Lucky to trust his instincts, which he said rarely failed. After Luke left, Lucky bet his siblings that love wasn't the only reason their dad was gone, just as Tracy arrived demanding to know where Luke was, accusing him of stealing $10 million.
That's not a few bucks, man.
No. At the hospital, Steve and Liz went over Shirley's options with Liz, explaining that surgery was risky, experimental, and unlikely to be covered by the insurance because Shirley was terminal. Liz hoped Patrick might operate pro bono, but Steve cautioned that it was a big ask for a surgical team. Still, Shirley was, I wonder how they get that option, because I feel like, and I could be wrong, but like if you're doing it pro bono, then your insurance, I would imagine that the insurance wouldn't cover if anything happened.
Right.
Like his medical insurance.
Right.
But it's like, who does he go to for approval? Like, can he just say, I'm just going to do this surgery for free and not charge anything? Like the hospital, I would imagine, would have some kind of a say in, you're going to be using our equipment, so you better charge something.
I don't know. Probably if you can get all of like the nurses and everything that are scrubbing in to do it for free too, then maybe they don't. I don't know.
If you work in the medical field and you know how doctors can do like surgeries and stuff pro bono, because you do hear of it from time to time, or is it just a TV thing?
I don't know. That is interesting.
I kind of really want to know now. I never really thought much about it until now. Anyway, Shirley was open to the surgery if offered. Steve wished Liz had talked to him first, but promised to do all he could to keep Shirley comfortable. Later, Liz checked in on Shirley, who appreciated Liz's honesty and advice, even if Liz didn't always follow it. When Nikolas arrived with a gift, Shirley smiled, touched that someone had thought of her. Liz took Nikolas aside to break the news about Shirley's cancer spreading. Nikolas stepped in to help Liz by offering to cover all of Shirley's medical expenses, making it clear that he didn't need thanks, he just wanted her to feel supported. When Patrick arrived at the hospital, Liz, Steve, and Lisa brought him up to speed on Shirley's situation. After reviewing the records, Patrick agreed to perform the surgery and invited Lisa to be part of his team. Shirley was relieved and even impressed by Patrick's bedside manner, which he admitted was a bit of a surprise even to himself. But he flirted with her.
Right.
How's he surprised by that?
Mm-hmm.
Before going under anesthesia, Shirley handed Liz something to hold on to, a small but meaningful gesture that showed her trust and readiness. Steve expressed gratitude to Nikolas for handling the financial side of things, while Patrick later asked Liz to leave the operating room, hinting that Shirley's condition was more serious than initially thought. At Lucky's apartment, Tracy showed up, demanding to know where Luke was. So then we go back to Lucky's apartment. Tracy's there flipping out over this $10 million. Lucky, Ethan, and Lulu all claimed ignorance, but Tracy was determined to press charges this time. Lulu stepped aside to talk to Tracy alone and surprisingly defended Luke, admitting she hadn't thought she would ever root for anyone besides her mother, Laura, but acknowledged that Tracy was good for him. The complicated family dynamics were clear as Tracy struggled between her anger and lingering feelings. Later, Lucky and Ethan discussed recent assault involving the Lopez brothers, with Lucky curious if Ethan knew anything about it. Ethan denied any knowledge, and Lucky wondered if Luke's urgency to get Ethan out of town had anything to do with Johnny being too dangerous. At the hospital, Liz was frustrated when Steve told her Patrick didn't want her in the operating room due to Shirley's worsening case. Steve tried to reassure her, saying she'd be with Shirley once the surgery was over, but Liz corrected him with an optimistic when, showing her hope. Nikolas found Liz in the waiting area, and they shared a candid conversation about Shirley and their own complicated history. Neither noticed Lucky watching them before he walked away. Liz and Nikolas agreed to try focusing on the bigger picture rather than getting caught up in small issues. When Steve returned with good news that Shirley had made it through surgery, Liz grasped Nikolas's hand in a spontaneous show of relief and connection. Later, sitting by Shirley's bedside, Liz thanked Nikolas again for his support and apologized for the way she had treated him in the past. Nikolas said he was glad they were rebuilding their friendship and gently suggested that Liz get some rest, promising to call if Shirley woke up. He should be saying when Shirley wakes up, not if.
Right.
At Pizzulo's, Lucky confronted Sonny about the bomb that had been planted in Johnny's car. Sonny denied any involvement, but opened up about how deeply affected he still was by Lily's death and the threat that Johnny posed, especially to Christina. Sonny warned that if he were taken out, the delicate peace that he had brokered between the families would collapse into chaos. Lucky expressed concern that Sonny's grudges could land him in jail if he didn't back off. Sonny wasn't swayed, insisting that it wasn't his problem. At the police station, Lucky shared his suspicions about Sonny's involvement in the bombing with Claire. Claire planned to get closer to Sonny by playing along with his flirtations to gather information, though Lucky warned her to be careful and not get too wrapped up with the deception. When Liz arrived at the station, she witnessed an unexpected moment. Maxie passionately kissed Lucky. Where did Maxie come from? I don't know. Maxie explained that she had kissed Matt recently and wanted to compare the experience to Lucky, admitting he still had the touch. Lucky was caught off guard and a little embarrassed. Liz confronted Maxie, accusing her of being a slut. Maxie fired back by pointing out Liz's own family situation with 3 kids from different fathers. Lucky quickly put a stop to the argument, and Maxie left, calling him hot lips. When Liz asked Lucky for an explanation, he declined, telling her that the past was behind him and no longer her concern.
Ooh, I bet that stung.
Yep.
Liz arrived at the park where Nikolas was spending time with Spencer. Nikolas shared that he was really trying to be a better father and get things right with his son this time. Liz apologized for having previously tried to keep Nikolas out of the baby's life, recognizing that she hadn't been fair. She asked if he wanted to be present for the birth and half-jokingly suggested he could be her birth coach, which would be a first for a Cassadine. Nikolas was genuinely excited about the idea, but promised to try not to be too overwhelming. It was a small but important step in their evolving relationship. At the police station, Claire stopped by to get an update from Lucky about the investigation into the car bombing. Lucky explained that there was still no solid evidence linking Sonny or anyone else to the crime. Claire admitted she had almost messed up while apologizing to Sonny for suspecting him, showing just how tricky her plan was to get Sonny to incriminate himself. Lucky expressed doubts about her strategy, especially her idea to accidentally leave a bracelet at Sunny's restaurant so she could return and get closer to him again. He thought it was a risky move that could backfire. Later, Lucky questioned Johnny about the bombing, listening carefully to his side of the story. Even after that, Lucky still suspected Sonny more than the Lopez brothers. Then he called Ethan down to the station and pressed him about why he hadn't been with Johnny when the bomb went off, as he was supposed to be. Ethan said he'd been honoring a promise to Luke to pay off Luke's cigar dealer instead. Lucky suggested that Sonny might have tipped off Luke about the bombing so Luke could protect Ethan, adding a layer of complexity to the situation. Lucky then handed Mac a file on an explosive expert who had flown in and out of Port Charles the very day of the bombing. The expert had come from Buenos Aires and left the same day, which made Lucky think this could be a critical lead. He planned to travel to South America to confront the expert and hopefully uncover who was behind the attempt on Johnny's life. I also would like to know where these very small police stations are getting this kind of money, because last time I checked, none of our police officers are flying to different countries to question people. But okay.
Nope.
Nikolas brought some later news to Shirley's room, telling her that Liz had agreed to let him be involved in the birth and that they'd be taking birthing classes together. Shirley was delighted and promised to stick around for the baby's arrival. Liz walked in at just the right moment, overheard part of the conversation, and couldn't help but smile. Shirley joked about how big Liz's belly had gotten and guessed the baby wouldn't be too far off. Liz said she was about a month away from her due date. When Shirley asked if they knew the baby's gender, Nikolas shared that they were choosing to be surprised, which Shirley thought was a great decision. She thanked them both for their help and support and promised to make a special piece of rose quartz jewelry for the baby as a gift. Later on, Helena approached Liz in the hospital hallway, wanting to talk about the baby's future and her place in it. Liz made it crystal clear that Helena would not be part of her child's life. Helena reminded Liz of her role as the baby's great-grandmother and suggested Nikolas would never completely shut her out. Liz, however, was confident that Nikolas would prioritize her and the baby's well-being above all else. She even said that if she agreed to move into Windermere, it would only be on the condition that Helena was kept away. Helena warned Liz not to be too overconfident, but Liz wasn't intimidated. She delivered a firm warning that anyone messing with her child would quickly see a different side of her. When Liz told Nikolas about Helena's persistence, he was clearly annoyed and promised to handle his grandmother's interference. He reassured Liz that she and their baby were his top priorities and that he wouldn't let Helena cause any trouble. This moment marked a growing sense of partnership and mutual support between Liz and Nikolas as they prepared for the next chapter in their complicated lives. Helena made an attempt to engage Nikolas in conversation at the hospital, but he was firm about keeping his distance from her. She hinted that maybe he was still upset over the events in Greece involving Luke and Tracy. Nikolas didn't hold back, reminding Helena that Tracy had come close to dying because of something Helena did. Helena showed no signs of remorse, which only added to the tension. Shortly after, Liz arrived to let Nikolas know that the boys were ready to be picked up from daycare. Helena then tried to pry about Liz's and Nikolas's relationship, asking if they planned to have dinner together, but Liz made it clear it was none of Helena's business. Nikolas gave Liz a supportive smile, and they left together. Later that evening, Liz and Nikolas returned to her house with Cameron and Jake in tow. Nikolas took the chance to compliment Liz on how well she had handled Helena's meddling, and Liz admitted she'd found the whole situation kind of amusing. Nikolas shifted gears and mentioned he'd like to get together the next day so the kids, Spencer, Cameron, and Jake, could play together. Liz was happy to agree, but as Nikolas left, Liz suddenly felt a sharp wave of dizziness. She sent the boys off to their rooms and sat down on the porch steps, waiting for the feeling to pass. The next day at Windermere, Liz and Nikolas watched the kids play outside. Spencer asked if it would be okay for Jake and Cameron to meet his pony, Nippet. Cameron was thrilled at the idea of riding the horse, and Liz gave the okay as long as an adult was present. The boys jumped up excitedly and ran towards the stables. Nikolas called after them to wait for him, but then looked back at Liz, who confessed she'd rather rest than walk that far. Once Nikolas left, her smile faded as she grimaced in pain, clutching her abdomen while leaning back on the sofa. Later, Cameron came rushing in to share that he had ridden Spencer's pony, but immediately noticed Liz's discomfort. Nikolas realized right away that something was wrong, and when Liz told him she was in labor, he quickly rushed her to the hospital. Why would you go to Windermere if you were in labor when you know that you have to travel back and forth?
Right. And why wouldn't you just call an ambulance?
Yeah. By the time they got there, Liz was experiencing painful contractions. Nikolas demanded that someone page Dr. Lee while Steve directed a nurse to get Liz settled into a room. Liz assured them that she'd given birth before and there was no need to stress. Once she was in bed, Liz and Nikolas shared their excitement about meeting their baby. Steve stopped by to check in on his sister, but after sending Nikolas to check on Cameron and Jake at daycare, he admitted the real reason for his visit, to see if Liz wanted him to call Lucky. Liz paused, then explained Lucky didn't have a place in this moment. Nikolas was the father and the one she wanted by her side. Steve smiled approvingly. Nikolas soon returned with the news that the boys were eager to know when the baby would arrive. Steve left to find Kelly, and Nikolas offered Liz something to eat or drink, which you can't actually do when you're in labor. She
No,
wasn't
ice
hungry.
chips only.
She wasn't hungry but appreciated their kindness. Nikolas joked that she'd have to get used to all the fussing from them once the baby was born. Robin then entered with paperwork for Liz to sign and gently placed a patient ID bracelet on her wrist, which ended in the number 66. She confided that Steve was a nervous wreck about the delivery, so the whole staff was on high alert, making sure everything was ready. Meanwhile, back at the police station, Claire spotted Sonny sitting alone in one of the interrogation rooms. She assumed that he was there to see her and took the chance to warn him that kissing someone without their consent wasn't acceptable, especially since she hadn't given him permission to kiss her, which would be what consent is. Claire kept up her rant as Sonny listened patiently. Lucky arrived just then and apologized for interrupting Claire's tirade, explaining that Sonny was actually there at Lucky's request. Lucky and Sonny's tension played out with Sonny teasing Claire about her outburst, trying to throw her off balance. But Lucky quickly called him out, making it clear he suspected Sonny in the car bombing. Sonny leaned on their friendship, but Lucky reminded him that as a cop, he couldn't ignore Sonny's role as a crime boss. Claire realized Lucky's trip to Argentina hadn't led to Sonny's arrest and worried about how close she was getting to Sonny. She insisted the kiss was part of her plan to gather evidence. Lucky joked about a wager. If she could put Sonny behind bars, he'd take her to dinner. Claire agreed, but told Lucky to sort out his own life first. Lulu warned Maxie to stay away from Lucky, saying he was still fragile after learning about Liz and Nikolas's affair. Maxie decided to get support from Robin, but found out Liz had been admitted to the hospital and was in labor. Lucky invited Maxie to a concert at the park, and she told him about Liz going into labor. Reassured Liz was okay, Maxie agreed to the concert. Afterwards, Maxie joked Lucky should have been on stage, but he humbly declined and praised Lucky for finding her place and doing well. When Maxie assumed that he was going to the hospital, Lucky surprised her by saying Liz didn't need him, which left Maxie frustrated. He made it clear he wanted nothing to do with more drama. Finally, he's learned this. At the hospital, Liz kept things light, joking with Robin and Nikolas about the patient ID bracelet and the excitement of the impending labor. Dr. Lee advised that while waiting for full term was ideal, if the baby came that night, it would be fine. Nikolas shared how thrilled he was to hold their baby soon, and Liz admitted she'd misjudged him. As contractions picked up, Dr. Lee confirmed it was time to deliver. Outside the labor room, Lucky watched quietly as Nikolas and Dr. Lee supported Liz through the birth. The room was full of anticipation and emotion as Liz pushed through the pain. Maxie caught up with Lucky afterwards, confronting him about not being at the hospital. Lucky got defensive, but admitted Maxie was right to tell him about the labor. Maxie reminded him that by asking her out, he'd made it her business, and as she left, Lucky admitted that anything was better than watching her self-destruct alone. After a final push, Liz gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The relief and joy in the room were tangible as Dr. Lee handed the baby to Liz. She cradled him tenderly while Nikolas sat beside her, arm around her shoulder, both marveling at their son. They laughed over Spencer's suggestion to name the baby Buzz Lightyear, but ultimately decided on something more traditional. Aiden Alexei I can't say it. Nikolasovich Cassadine. Liz smiled, imagining the boys' playful nicknames. Why do they have to give all the Cassadine kids 10 different names? But anyway.
Family tradition.
That's ridiculous. Liz gave Nikolas a quick crash course on holding a newborn.
2 middle names. My daughter has 2 middle names.
I guess because his are so long and crazy. I just don't feel like
I
they
wonder
need
if that's
it to.
still Aiden's middle name.
I don't know. Liz gave Nikolas a quick crash course on holding a newborn, and he clearly adored their son, already cooing and bonding. Nurse Shirley was then brought in, bringing warmth and comfort as she greeted the baby and gifted him a special good luck charm she'd made. It was a quiet, beautiful moment that underscored the significance of new life amid the ongoing chaos around them. Later, Maxie was relaxing at home when Lucky showed up with a peace offering. Despite telling him to leave at first, Lucky convinced her to let him in. He admitted she'd been right, though logically glad the baby wasn't his heart wished otherwise. Sharing cookies, they agreed to remain friends for now, both aware that they weren't ready for anything more. The birth of Aiden brought a mix of joy, tension, and new responsibilities, leaving Lucky and Liz to face the shifting dynamics of their lives. While Aiden's arrival was a moment of hope, it also highlighted the complicated emotions and relationships that would shape their future. Dun, dun, dun. I wonder what happens.
A lot of craziness. Yeah, it says that was his birth name, but it doesn't say
if they changed it or not.
They changed
afterwards.
it.
Got it.
Yeah.
So is Nikolas's name not Nikolas? It's Nikolasovich?
Huh. Isn't it?
I don't know.
I thought that it was because he has a really long name too. Hold on.
He does. That's why I was wondering. Is it Nikolas Alexei Nikolasovich Cassadine also, or is Nikolasovich his first name?
It's Nikolas Michael Stavrosovich Cassadine. So there's probably something in there that, based on that, because his name is Nikolasovich, is there something about getting the dad's name with the Sovich? Like, does Sovich mean son of? Oh.
You're so smart. Is that what it means? Oh, that's cool. That's actually really cool. Okay. I'll stop being so confused by it, I guess. I don't even mean to make fun of it. It's just a lot to say. But that's cute.
I guess Aiden's name would have been like Aiden Alexei, son of Nikolas Cassadine.
Got it.
How that.
So yeah, they definitely should have taken Nikolavich out. Why
do Greek names have Sovich in second middle name? Is that a good thing to Google? I don't know.
Yeah.
Greeks do not have middle names. What appears between the given name and the surname is not a middle name. It is the given name of the person's father.
Boom. Okay.
Grammatically, this is the possessive form of the father's name.
That's so cool. I'm glad they did it right. That's awesome.
However, the examples that they give are the ones that have like the Sovich. So the Alexei is
what doesn't belong.
Is the middle name. So that's probably like the Americanized thrown in.
Right. They just mixed
middle name.
Yeah.
Traditionally.
Right. They did her tradition and his.
Yeah.
Okay.
How about that?
That is very cool.
Talk about that. Okay. That's pretty cool.
That is very cool.
We know.
Yep.
Yeah, so Nikolas is Nikolas Mikhail Stavrosovich Cassadine.
All right. And he probably has the extra middle name because Laura was his mother and she probably was like, yeah, we do middle names. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Interesting.
That's very cool.
That is very cool. All righty. So Aiden was just born. We're going to have to see what happens next week with all that.
Yep. So on that note,
Monday,
sorry.
But on Monday, we're going to recap this week's shows. And as of August 2025, Aiden is still on vacation with Lucky.
Yes.
But join us on Monday as
Spoil-
we recap this week's shows.
Spoiler alert, that's actually his dad.
What?
Have a good weekend.
And we'll meet at the pier.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's show, we invite you to go to peer54podcast.com to subscribe on your favorite platform. Don't forget to leave us a review.
And you can also follow us on many social media channels. Just search for Peer 54 Podcast. Also, we are not perfect, so if there is something that we missed or messed up, just let us know by emailing us at peer54podcast@gmail.com.